going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Here we go again.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadrome. This is Burn Power, here to discuss some final things with you. I just saw the films within a day and a half of each other of Final Destination's Bloodlines, the 6th entry in the franchise, and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, which is the final out of, what is that, 8? It's quite a bit. And I wasn't going to do a review or anything about either of them until I was sitting in the middle of Mission Impossible Final Reckonings, and I just thought, interesting. And so we'll get to that in just a minute, but before we do, hey, have you subscribed to the channel yet? You need to. More importantly, go ahead and share this, like it, do what you gotta do, and really, I could use some help. So supporting this would be good. There's a PayPal link down below, and if you give $25 or more, well, I'll send you a copy of my book of strange little puppet plays that I did. It's about 50 pages long, and what can I say? Just write the word book in big letters next to it. But we'll let that sit there for now. And don't forget about my other channels, the original, the OG Anadromist, the Gravity from Above, which is really the oldest channel and has lots of documentation on puppetry and dance and other things in my journeys through Europe. And then there's Georgian Crossroads and Beyond, which discusses Georgia, the country I am living in, and other travel destinations I have arrived at. And then let's see what else. Oh yeah, this is the Anadrome, so this is where I stick all my music and movie and other art-related things. And there is one other channel, La Crematorium, which is where I hide my art, my actual official creative outworkings. Okay, so Final Destinations and Final Reckonings. Let's discuss it. So, last Thursday, we get our movies on Thursday, which is a good half a day earlier than anyone sees them in the United States. I went to see Final Destination's Bloodlines. I'd heard enough good things about it from reviewers to say, I've seen all the others. I have them all on video back in Alaska. Hint, I gotta get that here. But I thought, okay, well, let's go check this out. It's gonna be a popcorn movie. And so I went and did that. And as I'm sitting there, literally a minute before the film is about to begin, I get a weird message on my phone, and it says, someone just took out 67 lari, which is not that big a deal, we'll say $20, out of my bank account for this food delivery service here called Wolt. And I said, wait a minute, what in the world's going on? And I thought about it for a minute, and then I said, okay, I can't sit here. Someone's, gotten into my, figured out my credit card number. I've got to deal with this. So I left, didn't see the movie, left, and said, okay, there was a bank nearby. I went there, and tried to explain it to them. Curiously enough, the Georgian bank tellers are like, oh, do you want your account, do you want your card stopped? They didn't even ask that. I had to ask them. But they were just like really calm, much more calm than I was. I was like, oh, because in America, when something happens like that, you immediately go on into overdrive. I get the feeling it's not quite the same degree of seriousness here. Anyway, I got them to put a block on my card. And then I went home because obviously I wasn't going to the movie. And then I got home, did a little bit of research, and discovered that actually, I'd forgotten I'd made some sort of arrangement with this food delivery company for a year that, I would get a discount if I get, And so I said, okay, I was stupid. And I had the card unblocked and life went on. But it was a bit like one of those Final Destination moments where you're sitting there waiting for something and then all of a sudden something goes beep and you go like, oh no, I shouldn't be here right now. And that's the thing about Final Destination movies, is that there's this sense, of course, it's the inevitability of death. The main villain in the piece is death. But it's not normal death. It's death with an agenda. That is to say, if you miss your time to die, death comes back for you. And there are rules to how death comes, who can get skipped, who can't. If you watch the series at all, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, maybe that kind of film isn't for you. Although it is kind of, can we call all the gore and carnage fun? Yes, in a strange sort of way, much like a Punch and Judy show. Well, so in the new film, you get the inevitability of death, you get the rules, new rules in fact, some new rules, and you get all the premonitions. One of the things that makes this whole series tick is someone gets a premonition ahead of time, and they said, oh my God, we can't get on this ride, we can't drive this way, we can't get on this plane. And in this series, it's like, we can't get on the not Seattle Tower, Space Needle. And it's the kind of thing that says to you, death is out to get you. It's got your number. You can't avoid it.
Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
I always knew this day would come.
I got it.
I don't think you got it.
I held him off for years.
Charlie, get up here!
He's a relentless son of a bitch. Won't stop till he finishes the job. Death is coming for our family.
And in a way, the death is always presented a bit like a sadistic Rube Goldberg machine. Which is to say, if you know the Rube Goldberg machines, it's like, a domino hits a little flywheel, which makes a ball roll down something, which makes a bird squawk, which makes a trap come down, which releases a basketball, which hits you in the head to remind you it's time to mail the letter for your wife that you were supposed to. It's just these weird, convoluted contraptions to have you do kind of insignificant things. Rube Goldberg was an illustrator in America in the mid-20th century, and he started doing his cartoons about 1911. By 1915, a Rube Goldberg invention was already a well-defined thing. People knew what it was. And in fact, they didn't use the word inventions or even machines. They called them contraptions, which I think is probably the best way, because they trap you as well. Eventually, I remember as a kid getting this one game, Mousetrap. I don't know if you've ever played that. It was a board game where you would build it, and then in the end it creates a little Rube Goldberg device, and then a little mousetrap or cage descends on a mouse and you catch the mouse. The problem with that game is you do it once and you pretty much know how it's done. But death is presented like the sadistic Rube Goldberg artist. Interestingly enough, when you put the idea of the premonitions against the inevitability of death, there's a contradiction there. If death is so wanting to take you out and has a list, and if you somehow miss the list, then death is going to come for you in a series depending on how many people were supposed to die and such. But what's the deal with the premonitions? Are the premonitions another force contra death? Maybe. It's never explained where the premonitions come from and why there are so many of them in the series. Because in fact, in life, people get precious few premonitions that they're going to die. Certainly not compared to the people in the movie. But these Rube Goldberg death things, let me show you one from the teaser trailer for Final Destination Bloodline.
Thanks.
And interestingly enough, this whole thing gets set up, well, I won't spoil it, except to say it's different than it appears. I've been thinking about why the Rube Goldberg inventions, and in a weird sort of way, the Rube Goldberg device has become a sort of metaphor for us for an early version of the butterfly flaps its wings in Tokyo and creates a tornado in Kansas. Of course, that doesn't actually happen like that, but that's like sort of folk science in a sense. But nevertheless, there is a truth there, and the truth is that everything is connected, and things do have an effect upon each other. And we go through life, and there are so many things out to get us. And if we didn't get raised by parents correctly, if we didn't, in a way, it's like, if you aren't taken out by swallowing poison as a child or sticking your hand in a socket, maybe it'll be a car crash as a teenager. And if you don't go through that, you're with your drunken friends, hopefully not. But if you are, you're in the place where death is kind of hovering over you. But maybe later you move to a big city that has a lot of crime. Maybe a criminal will take you out. Maybe this, maybe that. You don't know. Or maybe you'll just get so depressed by trying to deal with love and relationships and such. You see where I'm going. But finally, the things we use to assuage ourselves finally start to take their toll in your 50s and 60s. The drinking and the smoking catches up with you. And all this time you've been like, who wants to live those last 10 years? Suddenly you're looking down the barrel of a cancer gun or a liver problem or something. But let's say you've been smart and you get beyond that. Finally, death comes for you because some part of your body is sitting there going like, we're waiting for you. That little cough in the back of your throat. What is that? Little bump on the side of your body. What is that? That problem you're having on the toilet. What's that? You see, and that's life. We're all going to get taken out by something eventually. And so there is that sense. I think what the Final Destination films are is a mirror, a very strange, creative, kind of funny mirror held up to us of the most extreme things that can happen if you aren't observant. But even in the films, you can be the most observant person in the film. And if you missed your bingo card of death, it's all over for you. You're eventually going to get it. And Final Destination Bloodlines, without going into a whole review of it, it really meets it's a popcorn movie. What's a popcorn movie? Obviously, it's a movie you watch and eat popcorn with. But what it is it's not a film you're going to go... It's not Tarkovsky. It's not Orson Welles. It's not Hitchcock. It's not David Lynch. It's not even, the various people who make meaningful, interesting pictures. It's just a movie you go to, and it's like a carnival ride. It's like something you do as an amusement more than anything. And there's a place for that in life. A lot of people think, I only watch really great films. What kind of life is that? And plus, I've often thought if you don't watch bad films and recognize them as such, then you can't really recognize good films either. Or you'll just be a snob because everyone's watching a Kieślowski film. You think, I watched The Double Life of Veronica, and, now I know something. Well, not unless you've watched, Basket Case. So that is to say, you have to have something to put against it to measure it. Speaking of popcorn films, we then come to our next film. Now, this one, too, has a little story related to it. Oh, by the way, Final Destinations, if you watch anybody's review of this, you'll hear the word generational trauma, because it's about something in the past that comes into the future. And my feeling is this. Who cares? Really, if you're going to a film like Final Destination looking for advice on, why your parents screwed you up or something like that, no, this is not what this is about. Yeah, there's a little lip service to this kind of stuff, but no, it's not that. It's a popcorn film. Get it? It's an amusement. It's like a funhouse ride. And if you take it on that level, it's pretty darn cool. And if is it perfect? Absolutely not. What carnival ride is perfect? Which brings us again to Mission Impossible Final Reckonings. Now, I've been watching reviews of this. I just got home from this. Well, first, let me tell you my trip to see it. There's only one IMAX theater here in Tbilisi. It is not anywhere near the middle of town. It is way on the eastern edge of the city. It's near the airport. And the traffic here is terrible. There are buses that go that way, but there's no metro that zips you along and suddenly you're there. They built this as part of a big mall, East Point Mall, and even in Georgia it's called East Pointy. This is one of the first big malls here. So they put an IMAX theater, along with, other theaters as well. And so thinking people would go. Well, later they built malls much more central in the middle of the city that also have movie theaters that also show the same movies. But the only IMAX theater is at this mall. And whenever you go there, there's almost no one there, because why would you want to travel through all the traffic to go see that movie when you could see it much closer to you in a very similar environment, except it's not IMAX? So it was quite interesting. There's a Russian guy named Ivan. I keep seeing at the first showings of films, particularly horror films and such. But he was there, and if you watch the little chart of the seating, it's just a thin row of 2-3 people in the middle, and all the other seats are empty, and I'm sitting way down at the front, second row. For me, anything beyond that is like television. That's just how I roll. So, getting there, though, I had to get on this little blue bus van called a marshrutka, and you're stuck with people, but I know where to get on to get the best seat and where to get off and such. It takes an hour and 15 minutes through the traffic to get there, and longer to get back. So by the time I'm done, it's literally a 7.5-hour day just to go see an IMAX film, especially when they're as long as this one, which is nearly 3 hours long, which is, they could have cut a half hour out of this and everybody would have been happy. But the Mission Impossible series is one of the best series out there, and I'm not alone in thinking that. It has been better recently than the James Bond series. But here's the thing. The last movie in the series, which everyone expected, Tom Cruise, the star, the action star, the last movie star he's often called, because his name alone will draw people to the movie theater. He came off of Top Gun Maverick, which was sold over $1 billion worth of tickets worldwide. And they all expected the next Mission Impossible to do something big as well. So it was called Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. They expected this one to be Part 2. They changed the name for a good reason, because Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning didn't make the money they thought it would. It was the first one in quite a while to not bring in the dollars they were hoping to, which was really strange because, like I say, Tom Cruise was on top of the world. But I think that, well, it just didn't get the reviewers weren't quite as enthused about it. And also it came out a week before the Barbenheimer thing, which then sunk everybody's boats. And that was a mistake, them releasing it at that time. I think it's a pretty good film. I enjoyed it, again, as a popcorn movie, not as something deep. However, one thing they did in that film that a lot of people had a complaint about was they killed off the character Ilsa Faust, played by Rebecca Ferguson. And for my money, the two films before that, with that character and with Rebecca Ferguson, were the best in the series, Rogue Nation and Fallout. And when they killed her, they didn't, it was just kind of a perfunctory, she's dead. And there was a moment of, Tom Cruise being sad, but they didn't make a big deal out of it. And for my money, they cut the heart out of the series at that point. It just wasn't quite the same. They had another woman, Haley Atwell, I think it is, come in and play another character, but it wasn't the same. And part of the reason, a lot of people thought, like, I wonder why they did that. Well, they did it because Rebecca Ferguson didn't want to be glued down to this thing for a year of her career one more time. And so she wanted out, and so they had to kill her character off. I wish they hadn't killed her off, though. I wish they just left her somewhere hovering around somewhere. But I think losing her really dented the series. And you feel it in this one. Now, this is a popcorn film. This is not about, I'm not going there to get deep thoughts about reality. Although, I did have a few. And they were incidental. Now, some people are saying, the story is too convoluted, the story, too much exposition, this kind of thing. But that doesn't really bother me. It was too long. Yeah, that was the main thing. But I got the feeling Tom Cruise had a lot of pressure on because the last one didn't do what he thought it would do. So that pressure is noticeable in the film. That is to say, there's a lot of pressure. And in fact, one of the most fantastic scenes in the film is all about pressure. I think we can look at this as a comment on Tom Cruise's career at this point. But, so other people are going to talk about, the story beats and the plot lines and all of this. I'm not doing that with this because there's really no point.
Smart people on every side are close to panicking.
What exactly is your plan?
Your team has been betrayed, Ethan. All your secrets compromised.
Everything you are, everything you've done, has come to this.
You gave him an aircraft carrier?
Our lives are the sum of our choices. This was your calling, your destiny. I have no regrets. Neither should you.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
It's about the stunts, and it's about Tom Cruise going up into the air or into the water and you feeling the reality of it, which I think is an important point. And I have, I might have my deep philosophical problems with Tom Cruise, whatever he believes through Scientology, but I have no problem with him bringing a sense of reality to the screen. Because I have the feeling if we start getting into this AI world of movie making, reality is just going to fly out the window and it won't be pretty. Or rather, it will be pretty, but it'll be as pretty as cotton candy. It'll be hollow. So the two main points, there's lots of stunts going on here, but for me, the two main sections, one is at the end, there's a whole section about 20 minutes long that involves what's called barnstorming. Barnstorming was a thing that happened back after World War I and into the 1920s, when there were a lot of airplanes that were left over from World War I, and particularly pilots who could fly. And so they started crisscrossing America and putting on these shows for people. And people would go up into the air and do these stunts. Did people die doing this? Oh, yeah. But it was just this fantastic thing. And the whole point of it was to capture it on a film. Because, looking up, if a plane is 1,000 feet up in the air, how much can you see? Not much. You need some binoculars to really understand it. Let me show you actually some clips of, this is from a short 1-minute clip of great women barnstormers.
It's a new breed abroad in the land. The woman aerial daredevil. Her motto seemed to be, anything a man can do, I can do better. The dauntless little lady is Mabel Cody. Gladys Ingle used shackled ankles and a hook for her hair-raising transfers from plane to plane. Most amazing of all was 10-year-old Mildred Unger, who got right into the spirit of the Roaring Twenties by doing the Charleston 2,000 feet up. A few years earlier, no woman would think of changing attire. Now, Gladys Ingle did it the hard way, carrying a whole wheel aloft. Imagine transferring planes while hanging onto a heavy wheel. Gladys proceeds with the job. You'd expect a Lady Hercules, but despite the grease stains, she still managed to look frail, feminine, and even coy.
So, you've got these people doing crazy stuff. There's that one girl doing the Charleston up there. I don't see anything attached to her. She's not holding on to anything. 10-year-old girl up in the middle of the air. I'm not sure that would be legal today. At that point, I don't think anyone knew anything about planes. So why not? It was a great thing. This was during the same period where you had magic acts like Houdini drowning himself in rivers or seeming to drown himself. A lot of stuff at the beginning of the 20th century, but totally unsafe conditions. Now, Tom Cruise does something similar, but it's a fight scene, and I mean that literally. It's not him in a plane fighting a dogfight, but although there is a bit of that kind of action, but rather it's Tom Cruise literally hanging off the edge of a biplane, and at one point transferring to another biplane. And it's a pretty fantastic set of stunts. Now, if I know better, we're not living in the 1920s anymore, so there was all sorts of safety equipment attached to, their billion-dollar star, Tom Cruise. And he was, but they, edited it out in post-production digitally, I'm sure. Nevertheless, absolutely fantastic stuff, and I'm sure he was actually up in the air doing this stuff, because that is Tom Cruise. But the thing that took my breath away, or rather made me feel so tense, especially in my seat in the IMAX, I am almost alone, sitting in the IMAX theater, right in the middle, second row, watching this entire thing. And there is a scene involving a descent into a frozen ocean into a submarine. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details except to say this. I was holding on to my seat the whole time, even though I know this was in the middle of the film. I said, Tom Cruise is going to get out of this because there's more scenes. I saw some stuff in the trailer. I said, well, he hasn't been on the biplanes yet. And I'm just sitting there, just gripping my seat. I realized this is when I had the idea that I should put these two together, these films. Because while Final Destination is a series of metaphors about the inescapability of death, Tom Cruise and his stunt work and these Mission Impossible movies are exactly the opposite. They are about, even though in the face of hopeless odds, human beings try to live. They try to breathe. They try to make sense of the world. They try to understand things. They try to find God. They try to listen to each other, even when it's hopeless, even when people are at war, even when people, death is inevitable. And like I said, in many ways, you could look at the whole scene under the water as Tom Cruise giving you a metaphor of what he's experiencing in life. All of these pressures that come down upon him. And when you think about it, there are just moments in that you're going, no, watch out for the torpedoes rolling around. Watch out, the ship is turning. It's going to fall. Is it going to fall off a cliff? Who knows? But you can sit there and challenge the believability of it, but you can't question the metaphoric quality of it. Because it is such an awesome metaphor of the way life sometimes just, because there's so much pressure under the sea. And everything in this environment is just absolutely deadly. So, again, go see these films. People need to go to movie theaters. Don't be the kind of person, if you're the kind of person who's looking for a perfect plot and, perfect dialogue and all of that stuff, don't go. But if you just want to see a movie, a popcorn movie, with a thrill that has the metaphoric quality of, say, a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster or a mirror room, this is for you. It's quite enjoyable. And I thought it was pretty interesting. Great? No. Really good? Sometimes. But it hit my metaphorical buttons. And I thought about the difference between that sense of what the horror movie gives you is you're not going to escape. But what the action movie gives you is, nevertheless, you have to try. There are 1,000,000 to 1 odds against you, but you need to try. So, Final Destination, Bloodlines, the inescapability of death. Burns says, check it out if you like horror films, particularly that kind of horror film. You know what kind it is. And Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning. The human struggle to live no matter the inevitability of death. I say check it out too. Are they perfect? No. Don't go in there expecting perfect. Go in there for the ride. And sometimes the ride's metaphors are enough. Well, anyway, I'm done. This is Burn. Thanks for listening to me. And, when I do movie reviews, I don't do them the way other people do. And, I'm going to continue doing that because why just be one more person who gives you plot details and let you know whether everything's perfect or not? I'm going in there for other reasons. And those other reasons are, how do these help me to understand the nature of life? So, from Tbilisi, Georgia, someplace, hey, have you looked that up on a map? This is Byrne saying nachwamdis, which is goodbye, and droibit, which means, temporarily. We will meet each other again.
When I go, I want you to give me 5 minutes. I told you boys I'm no escape artist. For the first time, I like the odds.
At the round earth's imagined corners, blow your trumpets, angels, and arise, arise from death, you numberless infinities of souls.
I need you to trust me. One last time.